Welcome to Wired Lotus's YouTube channel. I'm Susan Barzacchini, and today what we're going to do is we're going to learn to do the 2-1 weave, and we're going to be creating a pair of earrings. These are the earrings that I have shown here that we're going to be creating today. I already created one, and then today together we're going to be creating another one. But what I'd like to do is something a little bit different than what I've done in the past. I'd like to show you my step outs. I have a step out that I use when I am creating these videos so that I don't lose track of where I'm at. But I thought today what I would do is share those with you so that you can kind of know what to anticipate before we get started with our lesson. This is a supply list that we're going to be using. We're going to start off with 26 gauge round fine silver wire, 10 centimeters. So we don't need much of it, just a little bit of it here, and I have that right here. We need 26 gauge round fine silver wire, 110 centimeters. That's what I have here, and then I gently fold that in half. And then I need 20 gauge round fine silver wire, 20 centimeters, and I need that marked in the center. And I have two of those here. I've got one here and I have one here. Next thing we're going to need is 20 gauge round dead soft sterling silver, 10 centimeters, and two of those. And the reason why I have those in sterling silver is to just give us a little extra body. The fine silver is so malleable. We want to have that to be just a little bit more sturdy. We're going to need 2 ear wires, and right now, since I have one on the earring, I have another one here to show you. These are twisted wire ear wires. We're going to need some beads. I have all my beads here in this cup, and the beads we're going to need is a 12 by 15 flat teardrop top drilled bead. We're just going to need one of those. 8 by 5 rounded teardrop bead, and that's that other purple one there. And then 3 millimeter rondelle faceted amethyst bead. We're going to need 4 of those. So that's the purple ones you see down there at the bottom. And then we're going to need 1 3 millimeter rondelle faceted gemstone bead, and I've chosen a peridot, and you only need one of those. The tools that you're going to need is a round nose pliers, and mark that in the middle, and again slightly there towards the tip. The reason why we do that is because we're going to be creating 2 different size loops, and the further you get out to the tip, the smaller your loop is going to be. The other thing you're going to need is a chain nose pliers, flush cutters, and I use a sewing needle or a pin, either one, but it just needs to be fairly fine so that we can pierce our weave in the process. We're also going to need a permanent marker and a ruler. All right, so what I'm going to do is show you the rest of the step outs. The rest of the step outs, again, I keep this beside me so that when I do my tutorials, I can keep track of where I'm at, especially when I have a piece like this that's fairly complex. I don't want to miss any of the steps so that you can create the same earring and also create them the same. For this tutorial, we'll be doing just one earring, and then you just repeat the process for the second earring. So we're going to start off by using that 20 gauge wire, mark it at the 2 centimeter mark there from the end. At that mark, we're going to use our round nose plier, and we're going to create a loop. And this loop is going to be a secured loop. And if you need to know how to do a secured loop, I have another video on how to do that. So here we have this right here times 2, that just means both wires. So both of the wires, what we're going to do is just we're going to bend those. The top one, we need to make sure that there's a little bit of a 2 millimeter gap between these peaks here, and you'll see why here in a minute. What I'm going to show you is I have a mock-up, and the mock-up is a tool that I use in order to show you the 2-1 weave so that you can it helps you to follow along when it comes time to create our weave. The weave, we're going to begin we have our wire in half, and we're going to start that wire at the halfway point, right there at the halfway point at one of those 20 gauge wires that we have bent. And we're going to create 9 coils to the left and 9 coils to the right. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take our weaving wire, the 26 gauge wire, and we're going to wrap it around both of those wires. Then we're going to create a coil on the upper wire, and then we're going to create a coil on the lower wire. Now this is all just on the right side. We're going to repeat the process on the left side. We're going to do 7 sets of those. Let me point something out to you. I'm going to be referring to sets as 1 wrap and 2 coils. So that's right here would be a set, a weave set. So we have 7 sets of those there. So when I ask you to do 7 sets, that's what that will look like. Then after the 7 sets, we're going to add that little loop that we created out of the 20 gauge wire right up against our weave, and then we're going to perform 9 sets of that right after we add that loop. Now, let me show you what that looks like. That's going to be a little bit different because we have our wrap around the 2, and then we're going to wrap around the other 2. So I'm going to be referring to this as the inner, or the inner, middle, and outer 20 gauge wires when I talk about these in the instruction. So I've wrapped, coil, 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 wrap, coil, coil, coil. That wrap, coil, coil, coil is considered 1 set. The only difference is we're using 3 wires. What I want to show you here is just not to cut your weaving wire. When you're done with those sets, the 7 sets and then the 9 sets, make sure you keep your weaving wire intact because we're going to use that in the end. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to be coming in with our pin or a needle, and we're going to be piercing that weave. Usually it's pierced right around here somewhere, but before we pierce it, we take our big flat bead and we put that 10 centimeter 26 gauge wire through that bead, and then we just kind of line it up and kind of see where it just kind of fits there in with the weave so that we have a good idea where we need to poke that pin. So the wire's through the bead, we poke the pin right where that wire meets the weave. Once we do that, we can then thread our bead through that hole and then add a couple of amethyst and then just coil it on either side there on that loop that we made previously on the outer 20 gauge wire. Now what I'm showing here is I've taken this bead that was in this position and I've flipped it up. Being that it's just on 1 wire, we can do that, max it as sort of a hinge. Now I can bring a dowel rod in, which I do have a couple of those here. I have one that's 15 millimeters and 10, so whichever works best for you. I put that in there and I just form the entire weave there around the dowel rod. Then I bring my inner 20 gauge wire down, up, and this is in the back. Notice I've written back. So I brought the wire up and around the back, and then I just create 1 coil there up top. So you can see why it's important why we have that 2 millimeter right there at the top between the weave wires. Then what we're going to do is take our middle wire right in through here, and notice when I share this with you, I have all of the action wires in red or this kind of this magenta color. So this is our action wire, middle wire up and around those loops. Okay, those loops are forming 2 purposes: one to hold that amethyst, and the other so that we can wrap that middle wire around it, and then just allow those wire ends just to kind of hang there just for a little bit. Now what we're going to do with our outer wire, or the wire that had the loops and came down, we're going to bring that wire down around, and we're going to create a loop and a half, and then around this way, and then create another loop and a half. We're going to do that on both sides. We're going to take our weaving wire, create a couple of coils on either side. We're going to then add our other 2 amethyst beads here. We're going to bring it down through that first loop, and we're going to create 1 coil. Now what we're going to do is take that purple bead. I'll show you which one that one is. It's the one that looks a little bit like a rounded or a pillow bead. It's this little bead here. We're going to be using that, and we're going to be taking one of those that weaving wires that was over here to the left, and we're going to thread it through here, and then we're going to take the weaving wire on the right, we're going to thread it that way. So this bead actually gets threaded twice. one from the left and one from the right. Then what we're going to do is we're going to do another coil here on the loop, and then a couple of coils directly on the wire where we put through the bead. And the reason why we do that is for aesthetic reasons and also just to kind of stabilize that bead. We're almost done here with these instructions, and then we're going to get started. Then what we're going to do is we're going to coil on either side here. And then we're going to bring our weaving wire up. We're going to add a peridot, and we're going to just coil on either side. Now, remember that wire that we had just hanging there in the wind, which was the middle wire? Now what we're going to do is bring it down around between the two loops at the bottom, behind this little loop, and then through that little loop, we're going to create one coil. And we're just about done with that. And then we're going to add, as our last step, our ear wire. And there we have our earring. So let's go ahead and get started. And I'm going to show you this process step by step. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Here we have our two lengths of 20 gauge wire, which is sterling silver, and that they're each 10 centimeters. And they have that mark there at the 2 centimeter mark from the end, so 2 centimeters from here to here. I have my pliers marked, and I'm going to bring that mark, so we're lining up this mark there, mark here, and we're lining them up together so that they intersect. I'm going to take my wire and I'm going to bring it around so that I have it on this side, and I'm just creating kind of this loop. Now what I like to do is just take my fingernail and just kind of bring that down. And then I bring my wire down a little bit. Now what I want to do, hold on to my wire here with my chain nose pliers, and I just create one loop. If I want to, I can come in here with my round nose pliers, and I can just kind of pull that loop tight, and I can take my cutters, my flush side or the flat side, I hold on here to that little bit there so that my wire doesn't flick up, and I just go ahead and take that up. Now, if I look at this, what if this were a person, the head would be kind of tilting to the left a little bit. I do want that straight up and down, so I'm going to bring my round nose pliers back in, and I'm just going to just straighten that up a little bit. Okay, we're going to go ahead and do that on the other wire. Again, we come in, line up the marks, bring my wire around, straighten it up, take it out. Let's go ahead and hold here, and I'm going to use my pliers this time in order to do that. One loop. There we go. So now we have 2 of those. For now I want you to just notice something. Now my head is kind of going that way, or the loop is going that way, so I'm just going to straighten that up a little bit. We do want those to be nice and straight all the way around. We're going to set those aside now. We're going to take our 20 gauge wire. This is the fine wire, round, and this is 20 centimeters that I have marked in half. We're going to take our chain nose pliers right at that point, right where the mark is, and we're just going to create a bend in that. Just kind of make a little bit of a triangle out of that, and then we're going to do the same on the other side. We're going to create a little triangle there. And we're just going to just make sure that they kind of nestle in together. Eventually, we're going to want to make sure that we have that 2 millimeter gap right there at the top. That's going to be very important. So here we are in those instructions. We're at that 2 millimeter gap. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show you about the weaving. And I have that little tool to show you up close how to weave. And it's just a little wooden tool that was made by my stepfather, Art Kugler. And we're doing is we're showing how these right here are going to be mimicking our frame. And let me show you our piece here. Our frame wires would be these wires here. The inner, middle, and outer, those are our frame wires. Whereas the little thread-like wires, those are our weaving wires. So when I refer to using this tool, these are going to be our frame wires, and this right here is going to be our weaving wire. So what I want to show you is I want to show you what one set looks like. I had mentioned earlier that having a set is going to be important to know because we do 7 sets during one weave and 9 sets during the other. We're going to bring our weaving wire up and over both, and then between one, and then we're going to coil. So we've just coiled on that top one. Now our white weaving wire comes behind, in front, if you notice I'm kind of holding this here, and then around the bottom wire. Now I want to bring that wire back down. This is now considered one set. One set is 1 wrap and 2 coils. Let's go ahead and do that again. Wrap around both, bring the weaving wire between the wires, and then around the top and behind both, around the bottom, in between both wires, and then down. Now we have 2 sets. Every time I do about 2 sets, I bring my fingernail in and I compress those so that the weave looks nicer. Now I'm going to do it just a little bit faster so that you can just kind of see the cadence of that weave. Okay, so here we have it. Okay, now, because in this project we're going to be adding a 3rd wire, frame wire, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring that wire in so that you can see what that looks like. How do we add a 3rd wire into the mix? So now we take our weaving wire, bring it up over the bottom and the middle wire, and between the bottom and the middle wire, we come up to the top or the upper wire, then come in between the top wire and middle wire, and now we're ready to go ahead and create our coils. Notice I have 2 wraps there. My weaving wire is going to come down behind the upper and middle wire, and then up, and we're coiling around the middle wire. We're bringing our weaving wire down, and we're going to bring it up and around the bottom wire. Now, if you notice, now we have 1 set on 3 wires. A set being 2 wraps and the coils. So a set just means the wraps and the coils. Let's go ahead and do that again. We're creating a wrap around the bottom and the middle. Our wire comes in between the bottom and the middle, and then around the middle and the top, and between the middle and the top, up and over to create a coil, down behind the wires, and then between the bottom and the middle wire, and then around the middle, and our wire comes down, and then we're going to go around the bottom. So now we have 2 sets here on 3 wires. Here we have 1, 2, 3, 4 sets on 2 wires, and here we have 2 sets on 3 wires. Again, we want to compress those, and you can see how beautiful that weave is. So now that we have taken a look at that, let's go ahead and get started with our weave. The first thing that we're going to do, I have my 26 gauge wire, all 110 centimeters here, and gently folded at the halfway mark. We're going to take that wire and we're going to put that in the middle of our 20 gauge wire that's bent in kind of this half. And I'm just going to create a coil, 1 coil on the right, okay? And I'm going to just bring that in. I'm just going to make this a little bit tighter so that you can see what I'm doing here. Now, since I'm not using this weaving wire right now, I'm going to hold it over here and I'm going to continue my coils. So that would be considered 1 coil. Let's go ahead and do more. 2, 3, 4, 5, Now notice I have a gap. Because I have a gap, I know I'm going to have to compress. So I'm compressing those. So I have 5 in there. 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 coils on this side. Now let's go ahead and do 9 coils on the left side. So I notice I did my coils around like this, kind of around like that. On the left side, we're going to be coming in this way then. And the reason for that is because our wire is just going in the opposite direction. Okay, so now we're going to do 9 coils on that side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, compress, 7, 8, and 9. Compress. Now, as I was working with that, I really grasped that wire pretty hard, and since it's fine wire, it's going to be much more bendable, more malleable. So I'm going to just kind of straighten that out a little bit, and that's no problem at all. That happens to me a lot, and I tell you, the wire likes the warmth of your fingers. So now I'm going to hold this, and I'm just going to straighten out those wires. Okay, now we're ready to go ahead, and we're ready to begin weaving. I'm going to add my next wire. One is going, because my weaving wire is underneath here, I'm going to add this like this. So you're kind of coming in at this angle here because your weaving wire is on top and the other one is on the bottom, and I'm just going to line it up. Try to leave a little bit of a gap there at the top. If you don't, that's okay. We can add it a little bit later on. My wire on the right, I'm going to show you this here on the right, how we're going to be doing this. Remember, we're going for 7 sets. Just like I showed you before, we're bringing our wire up and across both wires and then between the wires, and I'm going to create a coil. Got a coil here around the top, or the top wire, and then to the back, and then we're going to bring the wire in front and between the two here, and I'm going to just use my fingernail and just compress those, and I'm going to compress further. Now my wire is going to come out, down, and around, and we're doing another wrap. Before I do this next wrap, what I want you to notice here is I want you to notice, and let's see if I can make this up a little bit, get in a little closer here. Okay, what I have here is I have a set. 1 wrap and 2 coils. That's a set. So we're going now for our second set. Okay, so it would be down, in, middle, around, down, and around. It's hard for me to keep this in the frame being so close, so I'm just going to just bring it out just a little bit more. There we go. There we have it. Okay. So now what we have here is we have 2 sets. Okay, 2 sets, 2 wraps, 2 sets of coil. Okay, let's go for the third one. Wrap, between, coil, coil. Make sure that your wires are not going on top of each other, which mine tend to sometimes. Okay, there's our third set, and then our fourth set between the two. And I'm using a fair amount of tension here. Fifth set. Notice how I'm holding onto this wire. I'm really supporting it. Here's our 6th set. And this is our last and final set for a total of 7 sets. We're going to do the same on the other side, but right now let's just stay focused on this right side. The wire with the loop that we made earlier, we're going to be bringing that in here, and we're going to be lining that up so that the loop's just a little bit higher. Eventually we'll be bringing it down. But right now, for the purposes of weaving, I want to show you something. If I start weaving it right there, which is where I want it, there's going to be a gap, and I don't want that gap to be there. So I'm just going to push it up just a little bit, and then I'm going to hold on to that wire. Now, we're getting ready to do 9 sets, just like I showed you in that demonstration piece. So let me just show you where we're at with that. We're right here with those 9 sets. So this is what we're going to create now. That might help you to see where we're going here. So I'm going to be bringing my weaving wire up and over the bottom and middle, between the top we're getting ready to add, and between the middle and the bottom. I'm going to push that up and just kind of pull a little bit. I'm going to bring the weaving wire up over the wire that I'm adding with the loop, and I'm going to be bringing that wire across, down, and in between the top and the middle wire at this point. And I'm just going to just kind of wiggle a little bit just to increase that tension, and I'm going to bring it up. So now I have an outer, middle, and inside wire. I'm going to create my coil around the outer wire, bring my wire between the middle and the lower wire, compress it in. I'm going to bring my wire up and create a coil on the middle wire. Bring my wire down and around and create a coil right there on the bottom. So now I have 1 set with the 3 wires. Let's go ahead and do that again, and then we'll just speed up the video a little bit here. So here we have wrap around both of those, in between the bottom and middle, up over the middle and the top, in between the middle and the top, because we're getting ready to do our coil. We're going to just kind of pull that a little bit, bring our wire around to create a coil on top, bring it between the bottom and middle, and then on top and around the middle, down and around the bottom. So there we have it. Now we have 2 sets here on the 3 wires. Just going to compress those, and just the whole time I'm working with wire, I'm almost always moving my hands. So that's what we're doing here. Now that we have a little bit of our weave started, now we can go ahead and we can bring that down just a little bit. We don't have to bring it down too much, but just enough just to kind of snug it up there. Okay, so what I'm going to do at this point is just speed up the video a little bit, just doing the same thing we're doing, but I want to finish out and create those 9 weaves. I have 2 so far. Okay, so here we have our 9 sets down here. One thing I want to point out is while I was weaving, this wire here just got a little bit out of whack. If that happens, this is the point when you want to make that adjustment. You're going to bring in your chain nose pliers here at the end. Very important that you don't do it here, because if you do it here, it's going to mark and work harden your wire. So I just come here at the end and I gently, and I mean gently, pull that just a little bit, just pulling that. And that brought in that wire end a little bit. I can also do the same here with the end one, just to bring in that circle or that loop just a little bit more. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add our weave on the left side. With this, because we're going in the opposite direction, I'm going to get you started, but I'm just going to let you take over then with our 7 weaves, just like on this side, and then add our loop and then do 9 more weaves. Because I want you to get you started, because it's just the wire's going in the opposite direction. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring our weaving wire down across both of them. And then we're going to bring them between both wires. This was one of the hardest things for me when I first started. I'm going to wrap that wire around the bottom, behind now, and then in front of the top wire in between. So now I have a set. I have 1 wrap and I have 2 coils. I'm going to compress those. So let's go ahead and do that again. Wrap around both, bring our weaving wire in, create a coil on the bottom, bring our weaving wire behind, between the 2 wires, and I'm going to compress. Now what I'm going to do is just push all those together. There we have it, just like that. Now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to finish this out just like I did on this side. But this I'm not going to show you, just to save time, so that this video isn't going to be an hour and a half long. So we're just going to make it a little bit sane. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and do the same thing on that side that we did on this side. All right, now we have, again, are those 7 weaves up top. Then we added our loops, and then we have 9 weaves. We want to be sure, I'm going to show you this, that we want to keep those weaving wires intact. So we're not going to cut those. We're just going to go ahead and leave those hanging in the wind. But the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add our large bead here, the large flat bead. And when I talk about top drilled, this is what I'm talking about. It has a hole right there. And we're just going to go ahead and add our 10 centimeters of 26 gauge wire there. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get ready with my amethyst beads, and I'm going to put those there because we're going to be adding that on. I'm also going to need at this step my needle. And let me show you a trick here. There's a reason why I didn't add the bead while I was weaving, and that's because I wanted to show you this step. What we're going to do here with our step outs that I showed you is we're going to be doing this. We're going to take that wire, stretch it across the weave, and to locate where we want to put our needle and to create a negative space so we can get that wire through. Then we're going to add our amethyst, and we're going to just coil it there onto either side of those loops. You're going to create a pinhole where the weaving wire and that 10 centimeters of 26 gauge wire intersects. So if I take a look at this, let me just come up just a little bit more. If I take a look at it, it's probably in the second weave. So I'm going to go into that second weave right there between the 2 wires. And I'm going to do a drilling, kind of a drilling motion here. And I'm just going to take that pin or needle, whichever one you have, it doesn't really matter, to create that negative space so that I have a place to put my wire. So if you take a look now, you can see I created that negative space. I'm going to go over to the other side into the weave at about that same location. I have that negative space on the left and the right side. Now what I can do is I can bring my, just back up here a little bit, I can bring my wire left inside there. There's plenty of space now, and I can bring my wire right in that space. What I want to show you is I want to show you what would happen if I didn't create that divot. I'm trying to push this wire through the weave and it just won't go in through. And even if I really push it, it still won't go through because it's really very malleable. So I'm bringing that wire through my negative space and I'm going to tighten that bead up just a little bit. Now if I wanted to, because that hole is big enough, I could bring my wire up and around and through again just to stabilize that more. But I didn't do that on the other earring, so I'm not going to do that on this one. So I'm just going to pull that as tight as I can. Okay, I'm going to add my amethyst bead, and this is kind of a rondelle bead. It's not perfectly round, it just kind of is flat on the front and the back. It just gives a little bit of an interest. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that weaving wire, I'm going to put it here into the loop, and I'm going to create about 2 or 3 coils here on this side. At this point, if you wanted to use, here, let me show you. If you want to use your tool to get in here, your round nose or your chain nose pliers, you can do that. But just make sure that you just go ahead. Now, if you notice that I'm gapping out here, I want to pull that wire down just a little bit more because I don't want that to gap out. I want to make sure I don't have that long wire hanging there. So I've made 1 coil here. I'm going to compress that coil towards the bead, and I'm going to put my wire, weaving wire, back in, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create another coil, compress, and let's just do 1 more coil. I'm going to put that in, just showing you here how to do that with the tool, and we're just going to pull it 1 more time. Okay, now this wire, we can go ahead and cut that. We don't need that. Now keep in mind, I'm not talking about my weaving wires. I'm just talking about this wire right here on top. Okay, let's go ahead and do the same on the opposite side. Okay, so now let's go ahead and take a look at our step out, at our next step. Our next step, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be working off of the back. Now that we have created all of our areas there, we can go ahead and make sure that you have that 2 millimeter right up and through here, that gap, so that we can go ahead and we can just bring that wire up and around in order to create that coil. So what we're going to do is turn it to the back. Okay, we're going to bring our wire up and around, and we're just going to go ahead and we're going to add those 2 coils. So let me show you what that looks like. We're on the back, okay, of the piece at this point. But before we do that, you know what? I almost missed a step. We're going to bring our dowel in. We're going to just form that weaving around the dowel. I have 2 different size dowels here. I have a 15 millimeter dowel and I have a 10 millimeter dowel. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that bead and we're just going to push it up a little bit. We're going to bring our weaving wire just around it. I'm going to hold on here to the top and I'm just creating kind of that arc. I'm going to do that on both sides with my dowel. It's really advantageous if your dowel can be in like some sort of vise or something. It just helps a little bit. Let's go ahead and just work it with this 10 millimeter dowel and just kind of bring it in and around. Now notice I am forming it to the side, not there and not like this. So I'm forming it on the side of the weave. Okay, now that I've created that look, I can go ahead and just kind of finesse it, start finessing it here with my hands. I'm just bringing that around, forming that on the left and the right side. And I do a lot of fussing at this point. I'm gonna try to get these weaving wires out of the way here. so that they're not interfering with my forming. Okay, so I'm just holding on here and I'm just bending these wires down, holding up here, and I just keep creating kind of this shape here is what we're doing around the bead. And this, I spend a fair amount of time on this. So now what we're going to do is bring our wires, our wires that are on the inside, we're going to bring them up and around. I'm going to show you what that looks like on the back. Looks just like this. So that's what we're gunning for. We're just doing that. So in order to do that, we still need to bring this up and around a little bit more. Okay, bring that up and around a little bit more, and we're going to bring our wire up on this side. And now, look at this. We need to get to this inner wire here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to finesse this out a little bit, and we're going to come under and we're going to bring that wire up and on top. You want that wire on top. Now we have to push everything back in again, and we're just going to just bend this. As you see, there's just so much finessing that goes on at this point. Now that we have that wire there, we can go ahead, again, that's these inner wires. We're bringing it up to the top. So now we have that. Again, that's what we're looking for, is that look right there. Took a while to get there, but we're there. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to pull those ever so slightly on either side so that we kind of create this support on the back of our piece. And that's what we're doing here. And that's why we create this little element. Now what I want to do is I want to just put one coil on either side. So I'm going to separate these just a little bit. I don't need all this extra wire, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of some of this extra wire here on the left and the right side. I'm going to bring my pliers in here, and I'm creating one loop on top. And that loop will end at the back. Again, we're working on the back at this point. And I want to bring one coil to the right of the peak and one coil to the left of the peak. And it's going to want to fall in the center, but you're going to just use the side of your plier and you're just going to pull it down over, making sure that it does stay to the side of that peak, because otherwise you won't have room to get the other one. I just want to show you that's that one coil. That's what it looks like on the front. Now we can go ahead and cut that. Okay, keep in mind that's the back. You want all of your cuts to go to the back. I'm going to now bring this wire in, and I'm going to create a loop. I'm going to create this loop, I'm going to do that to the front so that it's more of a natural movement for me here, because I am right-handed. And there I have my coil on the opposite side of the peak. And I can go ahead and I can cut that. I always make sure I cut with the flush side so that it has a nice flush cut. And I like to take my pliers and just kind of bring them in. And in the very end, I do a lot of knit tucking. So at this point, you can see right now how it just doesn't let that bead fall through. It's a very nice stabilizing force at this point. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to be working with those middle wires. We're going to take those middle wires, we're going to flip our piece over to the front now. We're going to take the wires up and over and around the loop and just let them hang down. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to be working with the bottom wire to make a couple of loops. So let's go ahead and look at our front. Here's our front. Let's pull out those outer wires for now. You know, the wires that have the that we made the loops out of. And what we're going to do is we're going to just bring in, here's our middle wire over here, and here's our other middle wire here. We're going to be bringing those middle wires up and in front. Okay, up and in front is what we're doing at that point. And then we're going to bring the other middle wire. We need to bring that up on top. And we're going to bring that up front too. We are just going to create a nice, gentle, pretty little arc is what we're doing at this point. And if you take a look here in this piece, you can see how we have our arc over here on this side. Okay, so our arc is going to go from the front around this loop, and it goes in between the amethyst and the loop, and eventually, and we'll just let that hang out for now. Eventually it'll come in like this, but we're just going to just let it hang out. So for now, I'm going to gently, let me just zoom out again. I'm going to gently create kind of this arc here, and I'm just going to put that in. If I'm rough on this, I'm not going to have a pretty little arch right up front, and I do want that to be very attractive. So I've just created that, and I'm not pulling hard, because any time I pull hard, I'm going to make a crease or a bend in that, and I don't want that to happen. Okay, so I'm happy with that. So now we're going to come over to the other side. Again, I take my wire and I just kind of pull it out a little bit, creating kind of a nice little arc there. And I'm going to pull that loop down just a little bit more. I don't want it so high. Bring in my wire, just pull. Okay, here. So I'm bringing my wire in right here, right between the loop, and the amethyst. So you can see right there how I have that. Okay. And I'm just creating that arc. I'm going to push and keep that shape. Want to keep that shape going. Creating that arc. I'd say a good portion of wire weaving is just finessing your wire continually. Okay, so looking pretty good. Okay, at this point we just want to just let these just kind of hang out in the wind for now. We're not worried about these, not right this second, okay? Notice I did not put the wire in the loop. I put it around the loop. It's around the loop. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to, again, move these weaving wires out of the way, and we're going to create a couple of loops here on the bottom. Now, the reason why we took our round nose pliers and created those marks, a larger mark and a smaller mark, is because of what we're going to do here at the bottom. So at the bottom, what we're creating is we're creating a larger loop, and then we're creating a smaller loop. I'll show you what that looks like here on the step out. This is kind of an important thing to know. With this, what we're going to do is we've got our outer wire here. We're bringing it down and around, and we're creating an outward loop. Okay, and we do that 1.5 times. So down, around again for a half a loop again, and then over. We're making kind of an S, a backward S, down, around, and around here. This loop is going to be done on the mark in the middle, and the smaller loop is going to be done here with the smaller section right here. That's what we're doing here right now. So I'm bringing that wire right where that mark is, okay? I'm creating a loop going outward. Just trying to let you see this from all angles. We've got a lot of wires going willy-nilly in every which way. So I just want to make sure that you can see that. Maybe if I come out more, you can see it better. Okay, I'm just going to form that. Let's go on this side of the barrel. Need to make sure that wire is out of the way because we have to go underneath. We're not going on top with that. We're going underneath with that wire. If we go on top, then it becomes more visible, and that's not something I desire. So I've now come around the back, okay? And again, this is on the middle section of my pliers. And I'm just kind of turning that a little bit, okay? And now I'm going to move my pliers a little bit, and we're going to continue another half turn. So I'm almost using my pliers like a mandrel at this point. Okay. There we go. Just moving that up. Okay, let's do the same on the opposite side. That way you can become very familiar with what we're doing here. I'm going to bring my pliers in to where I have that mark in the middle. Bringing my wire outward. And I'm going to just move my pliers a little bit, making sure I keep that in the middle. And see, I'm behind now. Going to adjust my pliers here. Here I'm rotating the pliers just a little bit. I want to come in. Now my weaving wire's in the way here. I just need to move that. No problem. Come in from behind. This is a little bit of a tricky maneuver. Now we're going to adjust our pliers again. I'm going to compress these two so that the loop stays nice. And now we're coming out. See, we're out on both sides. And now on both sides, we have 1.5 turn. So it looks like this at this point. Now what we have to do is create a loop going this way. Now if I look at my wire, I can see that my wire is just, first, a couple of things. One is that my loop here is separated. I don't want that loop to be separated. So I'm going to come in with my pliers and I'm just going to compress that so that it's no longer separated. If I take a look here at what I have, I really feel like I need to just cut that wire length off just a little bit. Let's go ahead and say that we're going to go from that loop there to about I'd say about 2 centimeters, and we're going to cut there at the 2 centimeter mark. We don't need all that extra wire for this next thing, this next action we're going to take. Okay, so from where that big loop ends to the end of the wire, we're going to go ahead and we're going to cut at the 2 centimeter mark. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take our smaller part of our pliers and we're going to come in where that smaller loop is, and we're going to create another loop just like we did before. And this one here is, we need to make sure that we're going underneath again. We don't want to go on top, we're going underneath. This is more of a just kind of this. This is kind of the loop that we're going for. Now, one thing I want to notice is that there's too much wire in through here. I don't need all that space. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take my flush cutter towards a piece, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut that off just a little bit. This is actually really nice because my loop is actually even nicer at this point because it's just been cut off. So again, coming in behind, still coming in behind, finishing out that loop at about 1.5 turns. Okay, and then we're going to bring it up. Okay, so there we have it. We're going to do the same on the other side. So since I had to cut a little bit off of there, let's just go ahead and do a little bit less. Maybe let's go maybe 1.5 centimeters at this point. Our pliers in here. Let's get all of these wires out of the way so you can see what's going on here. And this right here, we're just going to take our pliers and go this direction here this time. Going to the smaller part of the pliers, and we're going outwards. And underneath. And we're going to do that a total of 1.5 times. We just want to make sure that it's even on both the left and the right side. Okay, so there we have it. What I'm going to do at this point is just bring, if you take a look here, that small loop, it just kind of comes up a little bit. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to bring this loop here and we're going to bring it up. So let's take our round nose pliers and just kind of push it up a little bit. We can even use our fingers if we wanted to. There we go. Now that we've put our loops in, now what we're going to do is take our weaving wire and coil twice here on the middle wire. Then we're going to add our amethyst, and then we're going to coil it right here onto our larger loop. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so we're just going to take that weaving wire and we're going to bring it up on top, and we're going to coil it twice here to that middle wire. This is our middle wire. Our middle wire is the one that's arcing up front. Once, twice, okay, it's nice and together now. Let's do that on the opposite side. I'm going to push that in a little bit. I'm just compressing everything in here a little. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to add 2 more of our amethyst beads. And then we're going to coil onto the loop, the larger of the 2 loops. Okay, so I've got my amethyst bead in here. So what I'm going to do is come towards the back. All right, I'm just going to create 1 loop. All right, now that we have our amethyst beads on, our next step that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to add our purple bead here onto our loops. The way that we do that, I make sure that this bead has a hole that's big enough that we can pass 2 wires through it. And let me show you what I'm talking about. Here we have the 26 gauge wire, weaving wire on one side, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to thread that through. There we go. Now we're going to take this wire on the other side and we're going to thread it through going the opposite direction. I really like doing this if I can with a bead, if the hole is big enough, because what happens is that stabilizes the bead. There's less movement with the bead, and it just makes things just a little bit more secure all the way around. Sometimes if there's a kink in the wire, your bead will have a difficult time reaching that point. So I'm just pulling on this side, pulling on that side, pulling on this side, and I'm just trying to create that look right there so that I can try to get that bead down there. There we go. And I'm just going back and forth. Over and over again, just so I get it in nice and tight. There we have it. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to take the weaving wire, put it here, and we're going to create one coil on both sides. Just one. And then we're going to let that wire come out between the loop and the bead. Down, over, around. Okay, so now what we have looks like this at this point. I do something, not everybody does this, but I really like doing this one thing. It just kind of locks everything in. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our weaving wire, we're going to put it down between the bead and kind of in this like triangular area here. And what we're doing is we're creating two coils right here on here. Let me show you what I'm talking about. In our step out, we're creating two coils on that wire. So here's one coil. Zoom up on this a little more if I can. Okay, there's one coil. I'm going to just pull that taut. I'm going to put that back in that area there. Just want you to see where I'm putting that wire. And I'm just kind of helping it out a little bit there with my thumb. See, it just kind of creates this kind of this look, and I'm going to create a coil right next to it. See there? And we're going to do the same on the other side. So I'm bringing that wire down, in, and up. And in this triangular area, and now going for a second coil. Making sure that those coils there are side by side. Now we can take our weaving wire that we have left over at this point and go ahead and weave out right here along either side. So I'm going to bring it from behind just because I think it just looks a little bit more tidy. So I'm going to bring it in like this. And this one here looks like it is going to have to go up front. We're going to bring it up front. Okay, let's go ahead and just create some coils right along the larger loop here. Let me show you here what that looks like. It looks like this. Right along here. Right? Just creating those coils. Now we're going to go ahead and coil the other side. So we need to secure this part right here. Right here, otherwise this is kind of dangling in the wind. So what we're going to do is bring our wire down, in, and around to this side here. We're going to bring our wire up and through that little triangular area there again. And I'm just going to kind of pull that, kind of ratchet it a little bit. Just make sure it looks okay from the back, looks good. And now what we're going to do is we're going to bring our wire down, around, and here into the center, and we're going to create one coil here on this side. All right, at this point here, we're going to be done with this wire. We're going to come over to this side and we're going to do the same. We're going to bring our wire down into that little triangular area there. Okay, we really want to just bring that a little bit more. Yep, that's right. And then what we're going to do is with this wire, we're going to come in, create one loop, and then we're going to come over here to the outside. We're going to create one coil here. And one more coil, and then we're going to add our peridot. Right, and now we're ready to add our peridot to the other side. So here we have our peridot. We're going to go ahead and we're going to add it to the other side. Just add that there, and we're just going to coil it to the opposite side. It's going right here in the loop. If you need to use your needle just to kind of, create some space, feel free to do that. That's no problem at all. Okay, so there we have the peridot in there, and now we're going to create another coil. And that coil will just lock in that peridot. I'm holding on to the peridot on the other side so that it doesn't shift or move and cause that wire to get too elongated. All right, there we go. Now we're just going to put that in there, and we're just going to create another coil. There we go. We got our other coil there. We have one more motion we're going to do. Let me show you what that is going to be. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to be bringing our outside wires that have been hanging out in the wind there all this time in and around in the back, and we're going to bring it up and through here into that loop, and we're going to create one coil. So at this point, we're all done with our weaving wires. Let's go ahead and cut those. We don't need those any longer. Cutting them off to the back. Now we're going to take that wire that we had up top. This is that outer 20 gauge wire, and we're going to just bring it around that loop, and I use my finger for this motion. Just kind of a motion inward, like so. And I come in behind, and I come down, and I create a kind of a U look here. And I start to bring my wire in. I find that this works best if you use a shorter wire. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut that wire a little bit more. Okay. And now I'm going to I'm holding on, I'm stabilizing all of this so it doesn't pull out. Very important to do that. My coil, I'm going to show you here, it's going to go here on the bottom. So what we're doing is creating that coil right there on the bottom. And it's just one coil. Okay. Let's go ahead and cut our extra wire. We don't need that extra wire there. Okay, let's do the same on the other side. Again, that wire is going to come up and around, and we're going to use our thumb or finger or whatever just to kind of form that kind of that arc look. So we're just bringing it up and over. We're forming that right there, and we're bringing it between the two loops at this point, between the two loops. And now I'm going to bring this upside down just so you know what I'm doing. And again, I don't need all that excess wire. I'm going to go ahead and cut some of that off. It was nice to be able to work with it, but once you get to making these loops, it really is easier if it's done with just a little bit. So there we have it. And there we go. We're very close to being done. Okay, so got it there to the opposite side, and I'm just going to pinch it in. Now that I have created all the pieces that I need to in order for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to finesse this entire piece. I'm going to move this wire over a little bit, and like this one here, it looks like that amethyst needs to come forward a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just do what I call finessing. I'm just going to be pushing, turning, pulling. Like this piece here, it looks like it's just a little too far out. I'm going to just go ahead and push it in a little bit. I'm going to be doing a lot of that until I get what looks like this. So it's just a lot of movement that I'm doing. So I'm going to go ahead and do that off camera, and then we're going to come back on, and then we're going to add our ear wire. Okay, I'll be back here shortly. Now we're ready to go ahead and add our ear wire. I just bring my chain nose pliers in, just pull that out to create kind of an opening there. And that 2 millimeter that we left on top, this will just go right in through here. And then we will close it the way we came up. So there we have our piece. There's our earring. Now what we're going to do is we're going to give it a patina, just like this, so that when I come back, I'll show you both of them with the patina, and you can just kind of see the finished look. I think they're lovely. Here we have our finished piece with the patina, and if you need to know how to patina, I do have a separate video on that. Here, let's go ahead and put these two earrings together so you can see them side by side, all finished, ready to dangle off of somebody's ears. I tell you what, I have a little model here. I call her Esther, and Esther is going to be wearing a modified version of this tutorial in a necklace form. So let me just go ahead and show you what this looks like on. Here we have our model. I've named her Esther, and she is wearing the earrings that we've just created, and a modified version of the earrings done in a necklace form. So as you can tell, you can create a pendant using this earring pattern, and you would just create one and add it to a chain and add a little jump ring. That's the only difference here. So just take a look at both sides here so that you can just kind of see how elegant these earrings are here on our model, and absolutely lovely. Thank you so much for joining me. Please be sure to like and subscribe if you found value in this video, and I'd love to hear from you. If you create these earrings, please comment on what you thought of the process, and if you have any questions, I'm always here for you. I do like to help people along with their projects. Thank you so much for joining me here today. This has been just a wonderful experience.